Welcome back to the Fear and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies, and just a little bit of beer.
So kill the lights, grab a cold one, and join us as we dive into this mad world we love.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
And I'm Jamie.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Did you miss me?
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
And as a reminder to all listening, if you want to help us to continue growing as a podcast, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whichever streaming platform you use.
To stay up to date with us and all of our episodes, be sure to follow all of our socials. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fear and Beer Pod.
Feel free to reach out to us. We love to interact with you all.
And here we are, special edition hurricane-style episode.
Special Helene edition.
Yep, Helene edition. Hopefully when this is out, everybody's nice and safe. And
is it Helene or is it Helene? Because I've seen people call it Helene too. Like Helene, Helene. Sorry.
Is it Isn't that Jolene?
It's Jolene, yeah. I know, that's why I'm saying it. It's like people say Helene, and I think it's Helene, but
I kept thinking it was
Helena.
Helena.
Why couldn't it just be Helen? Come on, Noah. I mean, really? Why are you getting these weird, goofy-ass names? But
I was just thinking of Helena from My Chemical Romance.
Well, in all seriousness, for anybody, I know this is pre-recorded, but if anybody is in that area where it's going to hit the worst, stay safe, or hope you stayed safe. Let us know if everything's good, if you need anything from us, you need help from us or whatever. But so buckle down and stay tight, and hope everybody's safe. But we don't want to make light of the situation because we know that's a pretty serious storm. So
that's the tricky part with these things. It's like you really can't tell.
Well, I don't think anybody really thought about it until like today or like last night, and they're like, "Oh shit! Like it's moving real slow, and it's gonna have a ton of time to like power up." So
that's just the crazy thing where it's just they shift so they're moving slow, but like all of a sudden it can go east and now it can go west, or it's just, until it really like makes contact, it's hard to. I've learned just from my short time living down here, it's just you can't really predict it all too much. You can look at all the patterns and stuff like that, but until it really hits where it's going to hit, it's a little bit trickier to kind of lock down and say what area is going to be worse off and hit and stuff like that. So hopefully everyone's safe. We are recording on Thursday because, well, there was no Horror Nights. They pulled the plug and they decided, rightfully so, just call it off. Just don't risk it. Make sure everybody is safe. Make sure your characters and your guests and everybody else that's involved in running the event is just batten down the hatches, making sure they're all good. Because like we just said, you don't know. This thing could shift. It could just bump east and come, more towards central style than west. So, so just hopefully everyone's safe. A couple things before we get into this episode. Where do I even want to start, man? Where do I want to start? All right. Well, today we're going to go over improvements that we think we would like to have seen, whether these are realistic or unrealistic. Now, going through the event a handful of times, visiting these houses, these zones, trying some food. We're going to talk about the icons. We're going to talk about the zones. And we're going to talk about the houses. And then if you have any thoughts on food or anything like that, we'll dial it in there. And like I said, some of these are realistic, some of these are unrealistic. I just don't know which ones are going to be which yet because, well, I haven't made a list. We're just going to go off the cuff tonight. We're just playing this by ear. We weren't sure if we were going to get an episode in because, if Horror Nights was happening, we might have gone and checked it out. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. Beer. I'm drinking a nice, crispy lemon lime Sprite. Taking it a little easy tonight. We haven't really been able to get out too much to stock up the fridge. We're on Daisy duty still. And as an update, she is doing great. She got her stitches out on Monday. She's got about 2 more weeks in little doggy jail. And then we can start to slowly introduce or reintroduce some sort of activity, whether that's a short walk or letting her kind of roam in a caged off area versus a crate. But she's doing great. The doctors are just ecstatic with her improvement, and so aren't we. So that's our little Daisy update. That's why I'm drinking Sprite. Seamus, are you drinking anything? Or
I got a Silver Bullet, my hurricane beer.
It's something, I got Sprite, so you're one step ahead of me.
Well, it happens. There are nights where I don't have anything either. So
yeah, that's just how it goes. A couple more little house cleaning things. I wanted to just send out a huge thank you. I believe when we recorded this our last episode, this wasn't announced, and I think I alluded towards it, that there were people in our community that kind of went above and beyond with helping us out with Daisy and that whole situation, and it's since been released. So,
sorry,
Amos' dogs are going crazy. The stuff that I was alluding to is our friends Matt and Hunter over at Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights put together this just amazing, generous extra episode. If you're not familiar, they do these things in the past. They've had it called Helping Haunts, and they banded the whole group together of podcasts. We got HHN365, the RIP Tour, Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights Gauntlet, and then our friends in Pangolin. They all, within 2 days of seeing what we were going through, got together, planned this episode, and they're doing a Revenge of the 50 House Shootout, the last 10 years. Now, if you're familiar with their last episode, it's just this absolute, no pun intended, dogfight of just a battle of the top 10 or from the last 10 years of these 50 houses. So it's an amazing episode. It's amazing that they were willing and able to come together so quick, do something special for us. And this episode is donation based only. So if you go to our link, you can find the GoFundMe page that's set up. So once you donate something towards that, we'll respond with how to access this episode. It's not live yet, but once it is live, I'll make another post saying, if you do want to listen to this episode, it's donation based. This is how you kind of do it. But that was just huge of them when Hunter and Matt messaged Jamie and myself. It was just like, wow, you don't expect this kind of stuff at all from, it's just really nice. It's just, there's really not many words you can use to explain it, but the fact that they took this initiative just merely after seeing what we're going so quick and acted so fast to have our backs, it was just really, really, really cool. So I just wanted to thank all of them that are putting that all together, because I know everybody's schedule is so busy at this time of the year anyways. So to add that on top of everything is really, really, I'm really grateful to have friends like that. And then thank you to everyone who's donated and already getting ready to listen to the episode. So if you have not, and you've maybe missed some of the posts, if you go to our links on our Instagram, there is a link for the GoFundMe that will kind of explain everything in full. So I'm excited to listen to the episode. And yeah, we'll get into that. And then we got another couple big announcements coming up soon. I might tease you at the end a little bit right there, but we got some stuff coming on our end as well. So that's why we're a little bit, this is it's a crazy time of the year, regardless of outside personal factors and planning extra stuff. So this episode is going to be about as good as we're going to get it. We got a lot of stuff going on. So
yeah. And if you see one of us fly away because the storm has blown down our house, then
yeah,
you get even that kind of entertainment too.
Yeah, even more stuff on the list of why we have no time to do anything. So let's get into. I did run into a couple people this week. I've been trying to do better about writing on my notes app. Like, when we bumped into people, but we got to bump into Bryce and Saffron again. Got them some stickers. We've seen them a handful of times now at this point. So it's funny how people are complete strangers until you kind of have that one-on-one interaction, and then now you see them every time you go to the event. It's like, even if you're not looking for them, they stand out now. You're like, oh, hey, yeah, I know that. We ran into Sarah, who does these amazing little watercolor paintings, and she had actually painted little miniature Daisy picture and a little miniature Boots picture that came out like spot on to them, and she only had a couple pictures to kind of reference, and the fact that she like nailed them is just really, really cool. But she met up with, I believe, you and Jamie the night or a couple nights prior, and then I bumped into her a few days later, possibly.
She was, I forget what night it was. It was probably the night like right after you brought Daisy home. I think it was a Sunday or something like that, or it was a Thursday or a Sunday. I can't remember what day exactly, but yeah, she did meet up with us. Her husband was weirded out So he didn't like come in and say hi, even though, listen, man, if you're listening, don't ever think it's weird. We love meeting people that listen to us because, again, it makes us feel like mini celebrities, even though we're not. So I don't know.
I got to
I think
chop
it's
it up
kind of
with them
cool.
both a little bit on
Did
that
you?
other night. The nights all blend together. I can't keep track of which nights are which at that point. But we got to hang out with Lex and Zach, which is cool. Zach from, I always forget, Ohio, I'm pretty sure. But he won one of our shirt contests like a while
Oh,
back.
yes.
So it was
Yep.
really cool putting like a face to the name and stuff like that. So I was just fun to finally see them and hang out a little bit more. It's such a crazy season. You're always like, oh yeah, we'll hang and do this and that. And then everybody that is from out of state, I'm like, I try to keep a mental log of like, oh, this person will be here then, like, and we'll do our best to get there. I really want to. So the fact that we got to make it happen was really cool. And then ran into Christy. They listen from Alabama, and I believe they're driving back today. So maybe they'll be listening to this episode on the way up, but got to run into them last night a little bit, chopped it up out in front of, I always want to call it Linguini's, but it's not. Louis, that's what it is. Louis, the little Italian joint. But bought me a little silver bullet in your honor, Seamus. So that was super cool. And I just love hanging with people. It's so fun when people are like, oh, we listen to you all the time, blah, blah, blah. It's like, why? No, I'm just kidding. But thank you. We appreciate running into you. I'm glad that I had some stickers on me to kind of pass out. I got to re-up on some of those. And well, that's our kind of pre-rundown. It's a lot. So I guess we can get into our main topic now, where we're going to go over improvements or maybe some just negatives that we've noticed that maybe could have been avoided, or just if you just shifted something a little bit here and there. So let's just start overall. Sinister and Surreal, the two icons of this year. How do you feel about them as a whole? Do you feel that they were handled like 100% properly? Are they utilized to their full potential? What would you change about them at all to improve?
I'm not even. This is going to sound bad, so don't everybody hate me for this. But I'm not even sure they were necessarily like needed. They almost feel tacked on. I don't know if maybe that's just me who thinks that, but it feels like they were like a last minute, hey, we got to do something to like kind of tie everything together. So let's just create two new characters and we'll add them up front and they can kind of be in the zones throughout the night. But they feel almost like forgotten or forgettable, or you don't even really notice them too much. I hate to say it like that because I feel like they do a really good job in creating characters. But this year, just these two just feel like it was, hey, we need to add something. So they just came up with whatever they could and kind of tied it into the Demon Queen's zone in a way. But they definitely feel out of place. And I think that's partially why that first scare zone, that duality of fear, doesn't really feel like a scare zone. Because I think they were just like, we'll stick them up front. We'll call it duality of fear. And they can kind of go up front and talk to people and joke it up with the smoke and joke with people as they're coming into the park. And then we'll kind of feed them throughout the other scare zones. But yeah, they feels almost like they're not required. Like you don't really need them for the season to enjoy it because they don't really bring a whole lot as far as tying things together. It's just, hey, Surreal's here or Sinister's here. So I don't know. I mean, do you feel differently? Like, do you feel like they feel tied in to the event?
A little bit, but not. I think that I love the design of them. I love that idea of like these two embodiment of fear. There's the sinister side, surreal side. I love all of that, but I do think that they sort of dropped the ball in how they were incorporated. I think duality fear is a major miss of a zone because you really don't get much of that. I love that they have like hot mics and they walk around their zones, but
yeah, that's kind of cool. But I mean, they are kind of doing what I wanted Oddfellow to do, more of. But at least Oddfellow, like it was a direct tie-in to everything. Like they made a deliberate point to tie him into everything. With these two, I feel like they were just like, we need something because people are gonna bitch because we don't have like an icon. So let's come up with something quick. Yeah. That's what it feels like. I don't think that necessarily is the case. And this is no shade for me about the way they're designed or their storyline or whatever the work went into putting together. I think that all came out well. I just don't think it doesn't add anything, at least for me. I don't think it adds much to the event at least as they intended. I think they intended them to be a little bit more tied in, but I don't think it hit.
I think Surreal fits like perfect with Demon Queens, but then if Sinister feels a little shoehorned into Torture Fair, like it doesn't
exactly. Like it's almost like she's taking away from the king and queen.
Yeah.
Not to talk over you, but like it feels like, it's the king and queen, it's their Torture Fair, here's all the different setups, and then she's just there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have liked it a lot better. I would have liked it a lot better if they just either incorporated her more into Torture Fair and kind of themed around her, make her the queen or something like that. And then Duality Fear, I think, is the biggest missed opportunity for them to like really showcase what they got going on for them, because
agreed,
it's a blink and you miss it situation. So while I like a lot of these characters, design, story, I just feel like there is a disconnect in the overall event and how they're incorporated. I think they just could have done a little bit better incorporating them. So let's get into zones, because we kind of talked about zones a little bit. Let's just go all the way up. Torture Fair. I think my biggest takeaway, my biggest thing that I would have chosen to do to improve it is either make Sinister a lot more prominent or just remove her altogether from that zone. Because for me, like, I get that torture-y, evil, sinister sense fits in there, but it just doesn't feel like that character is used properly. You have the king and the queen that are seemingly the focal point, and then you have like the other leader, Sinister, just sort of roaming around. It just kind of takes away from one or the other. But what's an improvement that you would have liked to see from Torture Fair?
Outside of removing the sawhorses, I think I wish that the different set pieces, or the little, stage area, whatever you want to call them, little stages or set pieces, or like little acted plays type thing. I wish they did. I wish it was maybe like, I don't know. It's hard to really say, because like there's just nothing in it that really draws you to it. You know what I'm saying? Like I think last year, in a lot of ways, it was the music that drew you to that zone. Like you wanted to hang out in that zone, and there was a vibe in it. It felt like a musical festival. And this, there really isn't. If almost like if there was more ambiance, like there's not enough like I know that they have the music playing, but I almost want to hear more of a Ren fair. I want to hear the music and the crackling and the clanging of swords, and I want to smell the turkey legs. I want to smell like the barbecuing, feast. I want more to bring me into that world, and just having the music kind of playing over all these different torture devices isn't really bringing that to me, or bringing me to that like I want it to. I think they did a pretty good job with it. I still think it's one of the better scare zones, if not the best scare zone as of right now. Even though Zombies has done a lot to win me over, and we'll get into that. But I think with this one, it hits in a lot of ways, but there are some ways where they're not making good use of the spacing in that area. I think they have created too much of a bottleneck in there. And again, it's partially the stupid sawhorse's fault. But either way, I think there's just not enough to really give me that feeling of being at a torture Ren medieval fair.
Yeah.
And I wish the king and queen did more. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't given enough time at that stage, but I don't feel like they have enough to do.
No, I agree with that. I do, like you said, I wish there was more of that Ren fair environment versus it's just these people being tortured, which I guess it's in the name, but still, like I would have liked, like, that turkey leg stand, like the, that's sensory aspect of the Ren fair itself. So let's move on to Blumhouse now. So what would be your biggest, what would be, if you had to nail down like your biggest change, what would you do to improve this?
Remove it. Can I say that? Nope. No, in all seriousness, this is it's such a letdown, because I really felt like they were going to surprise everyone. I think everybody was super down on it to begin with, and at the very beginning, I was like kind of bummed that everybody was super down on it. Like, oh, this is just a cash grab. This is just going to be another like, hey, let's shove a bunch of Blumhouse
stuff in the corner. Yeah, and we kind of discussed about that before too, where it did feel sort of like just real quick corporate.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like, I know that like when we first started talking this with other people in other podcasts, a lot of people had the same opinion, that it feels like this was just tacked on, and I didn't want it to be that. And I think that's partially just my bias. Like, I wanted it to work. I wanted it to be good because I like the Blumhouse movies. I like most of them. I think, there's a certain vibe to that specific studio that you get. And I think that they could have captured that vibe if they had done more to make it feel like an encompassing scare zone. Right now, it feels like a poor man's Crypt TV. And that's unfortunate because I think there was so much more they could do with this, and they didn't bother to do it. I think it was just, hey, build a few stages, plaster Blumhouse everywhere, and put the characters at each little stage, and then people will stop and take pictures. And that's exactly what it is. And it's unfortunate because I think they could have done a lot more. But I think for me, what I would change is aim to make it more like the Rob Zombie zone. Like, I know that he uses music. They were theming around his music videos, but there's enough in the Blumhouse canon to like make it more of a vibe, more of a party vibe. Even if it was like, take some of those party scenes from the various movies, like in Happy Death Day, where you've got like a party happening and there's lights and music, and then in the same time you've got people being murdered. Like, I feel like there's ways to make that certain environment happen, which we saw with Rob Zombie, and with this, it's super dark, not a lot going on, and sticking both Megan and the grabber at the same place was the biggest mistake they could have made. They should have put one on one end and the other at the other end. Why would you put the two? You knew they were going to be the most popular two
clearly biggest draws.
Right? Yeah. Like, you knew that they were the reason people were going to stop in here, and you put them both in the same spot. So now it's like the crowd is just so congested trying to get through that scare zone. It's just not worth hanging out in. Like, I don't want to stay in it. Like, I just want to get through it. Like, it's almost like it's more of a hindrance to walk through than it is actually making you want to walk through it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. My biggest change would have been just give these characters more props and setting props. There's we talked about it, I think, last week. There's no reason you can't have the tail end of the black phone van in there. You can have like a school bus from The Purge. You could do stuff from Freaky. There's just other little things you can do. There's some Purge characters have like a bat, and that's kind of the extent of the props in the zone. So that would have been my biggest improvement, was if you really want to set this apart, make these movies stick out distinctly different and put recognizable things in there from those movies, because they can only do so much when they're simply told to just walk around and pace back and forth. They need something to work with. So that would have been my biggest like adjustment for Blumhouse. Now we're going to walk all the way around the lagoon. We're going to go to Swamp of the Undead. Where do we start with Swamp's improvements? So I think the one that I would like to see is, I would have liked to seen, I think the biggest one would have utilizing that little cabin-y kind of thing up top. I would have liked to seen that supported more, so that you can have a live character up there yelling out stuff or playing into the setting a little bit more. And I also would have added stuff in the trees. I would have had more like lights and, swampy moss kind of hanging down, and put some green lights up there or something like that to like just kind of really encompass you into that zone. But that's what I would have done to alter it a little bit. What would you change about this one a little bit?
So with this one, I don't have a whole lot that I'd change. That's the thing. Like, I think this one actually nailed it for the most part. I think that there are things that could be different. I think some of the scare actors kind of just blend in with the environment, and it's not super noteworthy, if that makes any sense. Like, I think the setting is really good. I think it feels like you're in like a Louisiana bayou. It feels swampy. It feels Cajun. It feels like, like it feels like Waterboy in a way. Yeah. It feels like the dude from Waterboy. But I think some of the zombie characters that are in there. I think they're kind of boring, the costumes. So maybe improve that a little bit. But even then, like, I still think it all works well together. So it's really hard for me to pick something out that I think needs to be changed, which is saying a lot because I don't dig zombies anymore. It's not really a thing for me. I don't really watch zombie movies, to be honest. But there's enough going on where at least I feel like I'm in, a Louisiana bayou infested with dead things. Other than that, maybe do somewhat better at lighting some of the set pieces. I think some of it's hard to see when it gets dark out, but I think that unfortunately just happens because you're in that zone. It's very covered, which is also a benefit to its appeal because that helps make it feel like you're in a swamp. The trees and the Spanish moss and it just being very naturally built for that. Whereas other scare zones, they have to kind of really make it work when they, can only deal with so much structure around it. So I don't know. But this one, again, I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's, as far as all the scare zones are concerned, this is the closest one to being perfect.
Yeah, I like it because they do have that ability to kind of encompass you, and that does come into the fact of that's just the environment that they're working with over there. So let's go to our last zone now. That would be not duality fear, demon queens.
Oop. I muted you by accident. You have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Technical difficulties. There we go. I'll fix.
No, it's not technical difficulties. It's Seamus is an idiot. It's is what it is.
That's okay. He muted me when I said the wrong scare zone name anyway.
I meant to click my mic.
We'll make our way now to Demon Queens. Thankfully, I didn't mess it up the second time. But what would you sort of alter for Demon Queens if you could change anything to kind of maybe, I don't want to say improve it because I do like the zone a lot, but what are some things that you would like to kind of
for Demon Queens? Again, this is kind of like zombies. There's not a lot I would do to improve it. I think that it still suffers from the same problem that it always does, which is the lighting. I think they try to go way too dark with it every year, and it can be kind of hard to focus on what's going on when it gets dark at night. But at the same time, they did do a better job of improving that, so it's better than it was last year. So at least you can kind of see, or you can see a lot of the costumes and a lot of the scare actor work and the set pieces. I don't know what the big thing in the middle is for. Like, they're never using it whenever I'm there. So I don't know if
I've seen it. It's
there's something going on in it. All right.
Yeah,
so maybe I've just missed it then.
Yeah, they usually have the different like queens or followers go up onto the stage and just
okay. So I just haven't been there when they've done it.
Yeah,
but
they're kind of there, just kind of doing their thing, and then they'll do like a little weird seance-y thing, and then they kind of come down and rotate out. So it's cool, but at first I would improve that more. That's my improvement. Is I would do that more often. And I would have Surreal more involved, like explaining what they're doing. Maybe she does. I've seen her talk there before, but I haven't really sat and listened to the whole thing. And since it's a live mic, it could be different every time. But I would have her a little bit more involved. And I think some of the set pieces are a little samey. The little like swirly purple portals are kind of just, they look cool, but after the first one, it's kind of like, okay, it's just the same piece over and over again.
Yeah.
But let's move into houses now. So scare zones, we kind of wrapped up. And like I said, we're going to do this fairly quick. We're just going to kind of give one little thing that we might want to adjust a little bit. So we'll start at the front of the park. Monstros, the monsters of Latin America.
I know we're going to have the same answer for this one, I think.
I think so too.
You wanted to say it at the same time? 1, 2, 3. Improve the last scene.
Yep.
Yeah.
The end. Yep. The end.
It sucks. That last scene. So here's the difference. I think for Nick, maybe ruins it more than I think the house overall for you than it does for me. I think for the most part, the house is really good. I like the house. I can see why it was House of the Year in LA, but that last scene is such a letdown. It's so like just limp wristed at the end. And I think they were going for like, in the beginning where you have the live scare actor come out and like tell you like the initial part of the story or whatever. And you're kind of walking into the graveyard, kind of getting to know what's going to happen. And I think they were trying to go for the same thing at the end where he's like, now you're part of this world or whatever. And I don't know, maybe they just couldn't find a scare actor or they couldn't hire somebody for it. Cause like you say, it literally is like the cheapest Spirit Halloween looking animatronic I mean, why not just make it a puppet?
Yeah, it's a choice.
I mean, it just,
or just a
there
static
was
figure,
definitely,
like,
yeah. I mean, it's not effective. Just a loud noise. The thing turns its head. Like it's so just, it's so lackluster, especially after that massive animatronic puppet, whatever it is, bird,
the Lollapalooza.
demon. Like that should have been your end. Like, why did they need the end? I don't know. But for me, again, it doesn't ruin the house in any way. I just think it just kind of, it ends such a great house in such a manner.
Yeah,
It's the best way I can think about it.
It reminds me of those little like super cheesy haunted attractions at fairs. It's like the skeleton pops out. I was like, bah,
it really does.
I really, that's the only thing I could like immediately think about. I like how the story of the house is told. I like that you go between the three, pretty distinctly. You have the guide there to kind of overlay what we're doing and where we're going. And I like the ending where they kind of all come at you, and then that final scene, it's like, that's it. Like, I know you have this character on the stilts on the outside, but just that, I can't say, I don't know if it ruins it for me, but it definitely knocks it down like at least 1 or 2 on the rankings, just because they didn't stick the landing. So
yeah, no, I get that. I agree with
tricky.
that.
So we'll move up a little bit. A Quiet Place, I think, would be our next one. So A Quiet Place. What would you alter about A Quiet Place?
I don't know how they would do it, but I wish they had done more to encompass the idea of being quiet. I don't think they did enough to really bring that out of the movie. Like, bring you, like, I feel like it's just too reliant on your standard jump scares. I think a lot of the puppetry in it is good. I think a lot of those monsters look really cool, but in the movie you don't see the monster a whole lot. So I think the house could have been more effective or better if it was more, give me more dark, quiet, sound deadened rooms and have it more sound based than just, hey look puppet, hey look puppet, hey look puppet here, puppet there. I think that takes away from it. It makes up for it in a lot of other really cool set pieces. I think some of the scenes in this house are really, really well done, but I think that there's just not enough, quiet in the quiet place, I guess is my point. Now, it doesn't help if you've got a jackass group of people behind you screaming, like, intentionally trying to make noise. It's one thing if you're like genuinely scared by something, you scream, but like the people that just walk in and just like, just like screaming intentionally.
Yep.
That gets annoying. But if you have a good group, or if you get there, and it's late and there's not a lot of people in line with you, then you can get a better experience with it. But yeah, that's what I would probably change, is just have found a way to make it more like the movie than just scenes from it.
That's something that I really wish was played into it as well, because they did a good job of making it a quiet house, but I wish that the sounds were the triggers, if that makes sense. Like, if there is a scream, that's what triggers the death angels to come out, because that's the interpretation that I got from it going into it, where they're like, this is like, a very interactive, quiet house. Like, you need to be quiet. Well, you don't really need to be quiet because the scares are going to come regardless. So it doesn't really play that way. I probably would have, if I were to change this, I would have liked to have seen more humans and not as much of the puppetry. I know you kind of have to, but if I can't pick that one, which I can because I am going to, but I do, like you said, the whole deadening hallway, I wish that was in more scenes, because that will always get you. When you're in like the pitch black and that thing pops out of nowhere on the right-hand side or left-hand side, if you could just extend that hallway more, or have that be a piece of other rooms, I think that would have elevated it more. And I do appreciate this more and more as we go, but some of the animatronics, I'm kind of just like, all right, like they're high quality, but it's just, I don't like the reliance on it.
Yeah. I mean, we knew that going into this, it was going to be a really difficult property to convert, or not convert, but like adapt into a house. It was going to be really hard to make that work. And I think it shows that it was difficult to make it work. They did what they could. And I don't think it's bad by any means. Is it as high as 4 on my final list? Probably not. I think maybe I hyped it up a little bit too much, but again, I don't think it's the worst house at the event. That's for sure.
No, not at all. So let's move up now more. We're going to hit Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. What would I change about Ghostbusters? I really do. I'm enjoying this house more and more. The more I go through it, I really am. The one thing that I think I would alter, I would have made more Frozen scenes, and I would have made sure to have that AC pumping, because when I get into the Frozen Firehouse stage, that one is usually pretty cold and chilled down. But that first like Frozen room, other than the first weekend we went, I haven't really been like blasted with the cold air to get that true frozen feeling. I know it's tough to make it like an ice box. Like you can't pay to have it be a refrigerator, but like I would have enjoyed probably more of the frozen aspect and really dial in the temperatures to make us be in that environment.
Yeah, with this one, I'm not even sure what I'd change with it because I am enjoying it. I've never seen the movie. I haven't watched the movie still. So I don't really know much about the movie, but I get enough of it from the house so I at least understand what's going on. I kind of agree with you. I feel like if they're going for the whole Frozen thing, it's not really pulling that effect off. I mean, that room is really cool looking. It looks frozen, but does it feel frozen? Does it feel you're walking into, as you said, an ice box? No. And that is difficult to pull off. It's very hard to make that work. They did it with Yeti, so I don't know if they're just not doing it the same way, or maybe I just remember it being different than it was. But yeah, I really, other than that, I don't really have a whole lot I would do to change this house. I don't think it's the best house, but it is fun and it's pulling off what it was going for. I do like the scene with all the little marshmallow men like that, where they're all running around, like they're all like attached. And I go there, I'm like, why aren't you just eating them? Just eat them.
Yeah,
like they're little marshmallow, right? Just eat them.
They're tasty. I can eat like 1,000 marshmallows. I can eat them all.
Right, but yeah, I don't know. I think the house is fine. It's fun. It does what it sets out to. As far as changes, I think what you said is perfect. I don't know if I would do anything else to change it.
Yeah, I mean, we got everything we really wanted to, right? You get little nods to Ghostbusters 2, you get the Ecto 1, you get pretty much every Ghostbuster back. It plays the hits for sure.
Yeah.
Now let's get into maybe one of the trickier of them, Insidious.
Yeah, this one's hard.
This is a tough one to change because there is a lot going on and there's a lot right in this house. So if you got
I think for me, I'd almost give me more Lipstick Demon.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if we have enough of him. I know that he's special. We want to make sure he's saved for like specific parts of the house. Maybe I feel like they rely a little bit too much on static scares and not as many scare actors. There's a lot, like obviously they have like 3 dummy rooms, like where, and obviously I hate those rooms. Like those rooms give me the willies, but I wish they would do this with anytime they use this, is move them around. So every night where they are or in different spots, so you never know where the real person's coming from. I wish they did that, but they don't. And they didn't do it with Blood Moon last year. So when you're walking to the church and they have all the different pews, I wish they would have had the ability to change that. So every night the run was different for people. I know that's difficult to do. It's hard to pull off, but that would have been cool. So saying here, I kind of wish they would like at least change that a little bit so that like it was a little different every time you do it. But again, this house is like the zombie scare zone it's close enough to perfect that there's not a lot I would do to change it. I think this house just works so well. I wouldn't change the length. I would leave it exactly where it is. I think it's long, and it's long in a good way. It doesn't stop. There's no dead areas in it. Like there's no dead spot. I think everything is just beat after beat after beat, and it nails every single one of them. That I don't think there's a whole lot they can do to change it, other than what I would like them to do. But I don't know. I'd be surprised if you have anything major to change in this either.
No, that was kind of my one takeaway was you have the 2 dummy rooms, and you never do it, but man, if you could change where they are on like a set by set basis to like not really know where you're at, that would just hit so different, because those first couple times you go through, it's like terrifying. But then now when you're like, oh, okay, I know where they are. Like it doesn't kill the scare completely, but I'm like, okay, that's the person. That's the person. If you could float them around a little bit, that would just make that house fire like every room, because every room is just, they always get me. Every room still gets me. So that's kind of the only, I think, alteration I would make into that house for right now. But let's move to the neighboring house then. Triplets of Terror.
Ooh.
What would you change? Because I know what I would change, but
yeah, and I'm probably gonna be similar to you. My change would be I wish they had more voiceover. I don't like that you get one room where they're like kind of doing like the voiceover and they're giving you that true crime podcast, internet sleuth thing. But they only do that at the very beginning, and then it's just a hodgepodge of murder. And I've said it before. I mean, this house is going to sit pretty low on my list, I think, at the end of the year. It's just super boring. There's not a whole lot about it that I go, man, I need to do this house again. There isn't a whole lot. So for me, I wish they had made it more like the Boris Schuster house case files. I wish it was more like that. More voiceover, more, there's a story here. For me, it just feels super convoluted and jumbled together, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I understand that it's like obviously the kids are recreating the murders that they did when they were kids. It's weird. I don't really get a lot from it, but that's just me. Yeah. So no, there's a lot of things. I would just replace it altogether with something else. But if I have to keep it, that would be what I would change.
Yeah, this is a very divisive house because I don't mind it. I enjoy it, but you're not alone in disliking it. I talked with a couple other people. I know this isn't a favorite of Duff. I know this is not a favorite of Tim's by any stretch of the imagination. But I really don't dislike this house. But I think I'm giving it more credit than it's due, because I really like the idea of what they were trying to do, but I think they could have accomplished it so much better. And I think people would have really enjoyed it more had they probably eliminate that podcast room, and whatever message you're conveying through that, convey it at the very beginning. And you need to distinctly differentiate all the different years they come back to recreate these killings. Like, make it when they're kids in whatever year, the 50s or whatever it is, make it very 50s, and then make it distinctly 80s, and then make it distinctly 70s and 90s, and then present day. Like, make it so that we don't have to question, how old are they? What time is this? Where are we in the storyline? Like that would go a long way, because I think on a basis, that's a pretty cool, fun idea. The triplets, they come back, they recreate their murders every 10 years on their birthday, whatever. Like, I think that's a fun enough presence to play with. But what I think gets lost is the characters are so similar, even though they grow. Like, I was talking with this about with Duff the other night, where they're growing every year, but they're wearing the same outfits. So like, did little Junior buy 10 pairs of overalls, one in each size, so that way every year he gets to one up and go into the new size? So I would have used clothing and environment to clearly and distinctly differentiate what decade we're recreating these murders in, because you do get lost in that. It takes a couple runs. If you're coming once and you go through this without doing much research, you might not really know what's going on. You might just think it's all one thing, one day, one time frame. Even though they get small to big, you might not really fully pay attention to that if you're just kind of brushing through on a one-off. So that's what I would change. I think that would alter it in the better. I think just either scrap the podcast room and push that up front, and then make it very decade oriented to show when they're coming back.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Like, if you get rid of that room, I'm not even sure I'd like it at all. This might be 10 for me if there wasn't that room. If they didn't try to make it a little bit more than just what it is, but that's just me.
Yeah. No.
being a turd.
Yeah, no. That's a lot of people think that house is a turd, so you're not alone.
Maybe I'm not alone then.
And then there's people that love that. That's the good part about this event right now. Is
the podcast host loves that house.
Yeah. So let's move now to Sweets, Major Sweets Candy Factory.
This is another one where I really gotta. Yeah, I really got to think about what I would change. I think
the easy answer for me is make it bigger or like make it longer.
yeah,
That's
and
my
maybe make
biggest
it
thing.
longer.
That's
Maybe it
the
feels too
easiest thing.
short. Because I think this house is really good. It does a great job of conveying its story. You get everything you want out of it. It feels like a candy factory. It feels like fucked up Willy Wonka, which is exactly what we asked for. I love that we get Miss Treat right up front. Like I thought they were gonna bury her and like kind of make it his thing, and she's
Yeah.
the first person you see when you walk in the factory. And I think that to me is awesome. Like that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to kind of be like, oh well, hello, sweetie, welcome to the candy factory. Like that's exactly what I wanted,
Yep.
and we got that. Um, obviously, then you've got him kind of mixed in.
Doing his stuff.
Maybe give. I don't know. Maybe there's just not enough scare actors in it. Maybe I feel like there's not enough like messed up kids. Like I don't know if there's like enough going
Yeah.
on. But at the same time, there is so much going on, so it's hard to really like pinpoint what feels missing in it. I love the buttons. Maybe more buttons. That's a great idea. Maybe do more with that. I think there wasn't enough. Like obviously they did it with the Chucky house. Maybe add more of those. Make it more interactive than it was. Like those hammers, for example. Like maybe make the hammers trigger activated.
Yep.
So like when you hit a button, it triggers it like behind you, so the people behind you get jumped by. Like do more with those. They could have done, but all in all, this house is again really, really well done, and I think rightfully hyped up. I think a lot of people were hyping it up for a reason, and it kind of delivered what we needed or what we wanted.
Now maybe I'm just like trying to force this in there, but with this house, do you think there could have been a way in the story to have a Dueling Dragons style like split? Like maybe like going into like a Miss Treat style office or like a Sweet's wing. Like if you go to Treat's wing or Sweet's wing, like just a fun little like alter of that. I know space wise, we probably don't have that there, but I'm trying to think like if we were to incorporate a split again in a house, this seems like maybe we could have it here in this house, if any of them from this year. I know I'm trying to like force feed a different, like just like a fun nuance from another house and like forcing it into here, but you could do it based off of you're in a factory and there's it can get confusing in there.
Yeah.
So that might be a fun little adjustment.
I think it's an interesting idea. They probably could have done more to make it feel unique to each of those characters. But I think this house did exactly what we wanted it to do. I think it hit every beat that I was looking for. So it's hard for me to I really have to force myself to think about ways to change it or add to it anyways.
Yeah. So let's now move all the way back to those new tent houses. Let's start with Goblin's Feast. Goblin's Feast, another very
and I have to say
house.
up front, those tents are incredible. So like
huge.
Golf clap to Universal. I mean, they're massive. And I was worried that more tents, is that really going to work? And yeah, I mean, you completely forget you're even in a tent. So they did a really good job with finding that. So whoever manufactures them, A+. For Goblin's Feast, what would I change? I think maybe if they had continued the vibe you get when you first walk into the house, that the music's playing, the very Celtic Irish step dance type music, it feels like a party vibe, feels like it feels like a feast. It feels like we're having a big feast. And then once you leave that, it kind of becomes standard Boo House. And it does its job. Again, I don't hate this house by any means. I know that everyone was like, oh, I can't wait to hear what Seamus thinks about this one. I like this house a lot more than I like Dragons because it's doing what it says it was going to do. It's a goblin feast. It's a goblin house.
It knows what it is.
But I definitely feel like the very first couple of rooms are great. And then everything after that is, okay, this is fun, but it doesn't do a whole lot for me. Although the last time I did it, the hand was actually working. So if you've been through it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that's nice that it actually got that functioning. But at the same time, there isn't a whole lot for me after that first couple initial scenes. I wish it was more like that. I wish it was more village based. It felt like you were in like a goblin village, or like a village that the goblins had run over, and have created like a party feast for the goblins to wreak havoc in, and have the music playing the whole time, and people dancing in the fire and crackling. And I just, there was more to it that I think I wanted that I didn't get. And that's where I'm having a hard time with the house. Otherwise, I think it's it's exactly what they said it was going to be. So
yeah,
I think they nailed it.
Realistic or not, that centerpiece, that town center, I would have loved to have seen that expanded. And like you were saying, I want that vibe, that party vibe going on in that environment. And I want to be able to walk through that town center, not like walk on the outskirts of it.
See, I think they nailed that with Blood Moon.
Yes.
And that's what I was expecting. Like, give me a lighthearted Blood Moon, and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think they started to, but it didn't stick. It didn't stay. There's no staying power after that first couple of scenes.
Yeah, that town center square is like so beautiful, and I want to spend more time in there. So I would have sacrificed for sure one room, maybe two rooms, just to have that be expanded upon so we can feel more in that town. So
yeah, like I'm cool with going out into the woods, and then there's the giant's hand and the big goblin hand or whatever. Like that, like after you've done the whole party, you're trying to leave, you're trying to escape the town. That would make sense. But I feel like it kind of misses the mark in that sense.
Yeah, let's move to the neighbor tent. Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines.
Ooh.
Now, there's a couple. I'm trying to think of, like, if I had to pick one thing, what would we change? I guess we can throw out a couple things. So I for sure, for one, would have not made the Bride of Frankenstein such a useless character in this house. I don't think her persona matches that of what we got in Bride of Frankenstein Lives, or in a couple years back, and it's supposed to be a direct sequel. So I don't think we get a true interpretation of how she was left off versus where she is now. I would almost, you almost want to say trim the fat and get rid of like a Nox and a Moon, and like she will, like, make it just, if you're making it a true storyline of Van Helsing versus Dracula, let that story breathe versus throwing other little pieces in there, because then we could fully have more room of that battle. And
it definitely feels kind of like last year. I feel like there was maybe one too many characters in last year's house, even though the house was incredible, and I still think it's one of the best houses they've done, and definitely monsters wise. But it feels closer to Legends Collide. There's too much going on. There's too many characters. You have no idea why things are happening the way they're happening. There's no explanation as to why is she, like, why is Bride of Frankenstein helping her? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think that they suffer from wanting to put as many monsters as they can in one house. And they really got to stop doing that. Because I think you can, like you said, you can do a single monster or a max 2 monster house and really let the story tell itself and breathe and open up and really make sense. But when you're throwing like 3 or 4 characters all in at one time, it is hard to let everyone have their moment. And in this one, it struggles. Like, it makes very little sense. I mean, I get that, like, obviously her father, her brother, whoever Van Helsing is to her, was murdered by Dracula. She goes on a vengeance tour, but then it all kinds of loses. It kind of just loses everything after you get through that first initial graveyard scene, because at that point you're just like, what is going on? Like, all right, so wait, mummy. Then all of a sudden we're now, here in this Frankenstein, and then like, wait, hold on, what? And it's this. It doesn't know what it wants to do. It doesn't know what it wants to be, and it doesn't know where it wants to go. So I'm sorry, Monsters fans. This one is definitely more towards the Legends Collide side of things than it is Unmasked, and it's just not going to be that for me this year. What I would change, I think, I agree with Nick. Remove 2 of the monsters. Get rid of Frankenstein. Get rid of Anaxa Moon, whatever you say, how you say your name. and just make it straight up Van Helsing versus Dracula's daughter or whatever, and have it be climactic and the final battle scene, and like have it make more sense. Have her storming Dracula's castle or whatever. There's just it goes to too many different places and it makes very little sense. So unfortunately, this house is definitely kind of a letdown because I was expecting to be wowed by it like I was last year, and I'm just not being wowed by it.
Yeah, they were coming off such a high, and it was like, all right, this is just it's kind of dropped it a little bit. So let's move over to our old tents then. It was where we have Slaughter Cinema 2.
Ooh. What would I change about Slaughter Cinema? What would you change about Slaughter Cinema?
I would either eliminate or shorten the pre-room rooms, like the poster rooms. I would either eliminate them altogether or just shorten them so that way we could have had more in the houses, whether we get more movies or we just get an extra scene or a half a scene per movie, because some of them feel really short. Like Blood and Chum, it's literally like you walk in, you have the one swimming character, and then you have the big shark. It's really cool and I love it, but it's just very short.
Yeah.
So like if you could have just trimmed that whole hallway of 3 posters of the movie, I don't think those rooms are needed. I feel like those come off almost as just filler. Like maybe they didn't have enough props or ideas for 2 rooms per movie. So they're like, oh, well, instead of doing 2 rooms and forcing an extra room, just make each movie 1 room and give each movie a little hallway segment to break it up. I think that's probably how I would have adjusted it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. Similar to you, what I would do though is I would have rather have them just cut 2 of the movies that are in it and extend the other remaining ones. I feel like Blood and Chum, although it's a cool puppet, is completely unneeded. It's just Jaws. Like there's nothing really unique about it. I would rather have them extended like the Mardi Gras one,
Mardi Gras Murders,
extend the Demon Hunter one, extend the Zomboids, because I actually do really like that. It feels very Terminator, and I wish there was more to
cyborgs.
It. Like, it's like right now it's cool. I love like the lasers, and it feels like you're in a futuristic battle, and the costumes of the 2 scare actors are really, really, really cool too. I just wish there was more to it. So I wish there was like a few of them were chosen, just a few, and extended them, rather than try to fit as many in as possible. And then, like you said, add those like weird posters transitions, which I guess makes sense. Like they want you to introduce you to each of the houses, but like the clown one feels throwaway. Yeah. The shark one feels throwaway. And I feel like they could have done away with at least a couple of them and then let the others breathe, extend them a little bit, make more to it. Because I wish the heavy metal hell, like there's just not enough going on.
It's just like 2 short little rooms, and that's kind of short.
I like that it feels very Nightmare on Elm Street ish, very very Freddy Krueger ish, but there's not a whole lot going on, and I wish there was more to it. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway, is that I love the house, and I think it's one of my favorites this year, but it does feel a little too much. There's too much going on. Like I wish they would like shorten it up, kind of like with the Monsters house, but at least it makes sense that each room is different because it's a different movie. Yeah. Whereas Monsters, it's like this is trying to be one story and it doesn't make any sense. But
that's all I would really alter for it. I did get to use I bought some 3D glasses on Amazon.
Yeah. So the blue and red ones.
Yeah, me and Duff tested it out in the heavy metal 3D section, and it doesn't like add a crazy amount, but it does throw that depth perception off. So it is really trippy. It's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to doing it again with those glasses, just to kind of see 100% what it looks like. But it was fun.
Cool.
It's something
check
different.
It out.
Yeah, I got enough for everybody, so it's fun. So let's move to our last house now, being the Museum Deadly Exhibits. Seamus, what would you alter about this one?
Oh boy,
where do we start?
Well, So the thing is again, I don't necessarily hate this house. I think this house it has its problems. It's definitely not the puppet theater of the season, unfortunately, but I think it does have its bright spots. I think there are aspects of it that are pretty cool. I kind of wish they were more direct and knew what they wanted to do. Like, is it the stone? Is it this weird goopy shit taking over the like what's happening? I just wish the story was more streamlined, because I do think it's an interesting idea, but there's just not a whole lot making a whole lot of sense. If it had been, hey, they uncovered the stone and what they activated some mystical power and it made everything come to life, you could have made it more of like a fucked up night at the museum. Not, hey, this stuff is taking over and turning people into goop monsters, but at the same time, everything's alive and killing people. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The story is very convoluted, and I think that's my biggest problem with it. Is it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Otherwise, I think it's a very well done house visually and auditory. Like, I think it sounds great, it looks great, but it doesn't make any like, just I don't know what the hell's going on. It's just very, very like up in the air about like what the story is.
Yeah, that's
there's very little explanation as to what the forbidden, like what is the forbidden stone, like what is it?
The rotten stone or rotting
the rotten stone or whatever. Like what the hell are you talking? Like what is the rotten stone? I know it's supposed to be that thing at the end, I think, but like
in the beginning, it's very it's just unexplained.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would alter the rooms and not give them these like crazy big plaques of like these crazy names, because you go into like the Viking room or whatever, and it's called like the Faces in the Fog, and it's got this big explanation. You don't have time nor the light to see that and read it all. Just simplify it. Just say this is the Viking pavilion or the Viking wing. Just make it more understandable or legible or whatever, because it's tough to picture this as a museum. For me, it comes off as very just mix matchy style rooms. It doesn't really give me that full museum feel. It just gives me hodgepodge. That's what I get out of it. So I would have just tried to dial it in and make it seem more museum-y. I know it's like a folklore museum or whatever, but you get lost in it. And these crazy names that they gave up for these different rooms, it just kind of throws you off, because I'm spending the time trying to figure out where we are, and that's as soon as I'm trying to figure something out, it takes me out of the house. So that's kind of what I would alter for the museum, to at least get it somewhere closer to legible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's all of our suggested improvements, whether realistic or not. I think that those would all maybe improve the houses or the event as a whole. I know at this point that those changes are not going to be made. These are all hindsight's 2020, but it is fun to at least look at some of these problems and not just say this is a problem, but also say this is a problem, but here's how I would have fixed it myself.
I do, yeah. And I think overall, I think the event is what it is. I think it's a good event. It's fun. I know that there's some discussion online about it doesn't feel like a traditional event, or it's one of the best events ever. Like people are very divided. I think some people just are always going to be positive, and some people are just always going to be negative.
Yes.
So there's always ways to improve things. I think this is no different. This year definitely can be improved in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I am having fun with it. I think it's a great event. It feels like it just started, and it feels like it's almost over, even though we've got a whole month and a week left to go. And we haven't even done our behind the scenes tour yet, or unmasking the horror tour yet. And that I can't wait for as well. I do wish, again, we've said it before. We had that phone call from that, I think it was Matt. I think he's the one that calls a lot, but I think that's his name. Mentioned the beer. I think that was him. Was that Matt?
Yes. Yeah.
I again, this year they do have the $3 at the one booth. I wish there was more craft beer options. I wish there was more options for beer, and it's not just Lacto Cooler or
Bloody Miller
Lite.
And Miller Lite.
Like you can't even get you can get Bud Light at the regular old beer carts, but there's not even like decent light beer options. Like it's just the trashiest of the trash, or you have like the one selection at the party booth. So if there's one change overall that they can make is improve the drink selection and stop focusing solely on mixed drinks. Not everyone's a mixed drink drinker. I don't drink mixed drinks. I don't have anything really to get out of it. So for me, if you don't really have solid beer options, then it's kind of takes me out of it a little bit. That's the one thing that SeaWorld has over them, is that SeaWorld has a better beer selection, better drink selection overall than Universal does.
Yeah.
And even the mixed drinks that they make, they're not all, a lot of them aren't great.
No, they're not.
I mean, they're good. They're obviously well made. The bartenders make them well.
And some of them most of them are just so batched.
Yeah, they're just not good mixes. They're just not really great. And they're not very creative. They're very standard. And I think a lot of reasons is just to sell merch. Like they want you to buy the light bulb cup. They want you to buy the popcorn bucket. They want you to buy those things, but they don't put as much thought into what goes into those items. And that's kind of sucks because you're spending a little bit of money for those extra things. Like the blinky light cups are, they are what they are. They're cool. I like that you can buy one and then, refill it at a refill price. So that to me makes sense, but I wish maybe there was just more options. If you're going to offer specialized cups and things like that, maybe offer more options for people. Maybe make it more than make the blinky cups more collectible. Like have a different one for each like couple of weeks or something, like you do with the magnets. Like this week or these 2 weeks, you're going to get this cup with this character on it, and you're going to get this cup with these characters on it. Like do something like that instead of making it just like the same thing every time you get a drink. Because nobody's going to sit there and buy a blinky cup every time. They're going to buy it once and that's it. So I don't know.
I do wish that they added more variety in the blinky cups. Like just print like 3 or 4 of them. They did that.
All you're doing is printing on plastic cups with lights in them. Like it's not like they're that difficult to get made.
Yeah, you've had that previously, so I don't know what the holdup is.
Bring back the blood bags,
please. Yes. So that's it for this episode. Just some quick little thoughts that we were thinking about. We alluded to it at the very beginning of this episode. We have some pretty big announcements. We have a lot of cool stuff in the works. So be following us because I believe we are going to be dropping the info on that on Monday. So make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're going to be putting out, we'll probably announce everything on Monday, I think. So you got a couple days to sit and ponder what we could possibly be up to. But I'm telling you, you're not going to want to miss this. This is a lot of stuff that I never thought we would do.
Especially if you're Florida local.
Yeah, if you're local, I try to make it, I really wish I could do more and more things so like outsiders could come more and more often, but we work with what we have and what little time we have available to us as is. So
right.
It's going to be a very, very fun stuff happening. I'm very excited. We're putting a lot of work in behind the scenes and it's just really cool stuff. So Monday, check out our socials. You want to see that. You're not going to want to miss what's going on. And well, until next time, this is Nick.
This is
Happy haunts.
This place is cursed. It's got a death curse.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare,
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.